Maybe we can touch on a little bit of the preamble or something from the big book. And there's a thing that I'd like to revisit. There's a thing I like to revisit. Oh, wow, nice, man. Wonderful. A thing I like to revisit sometimes in these talks and the 12-step talks, or the non-duality talks, the who's listening stuff. When they, at least from this view, let's say, the word self references J. So let's, to make it like more clear maybe, it's like the mental system. Like Ramana said that a person is essentially a bundle of thoughts. Hold on, I just gotta make sure this thing's on here. It's like J is a bundle of thoughts, yeah? So to me, the big book says they call that self, that bundle of thoughts, yeah? Now, in recovery, the movement is a loss of faith in that bundle of thoughts. Because the bundle of thoughts is conditioned. It's not an independent thing. It's not like when my head says J, it's presenting J as if J is its own, is an independent thing separate from everything else. But the bundle of thoughts, which is self, that is conditioned by past, yeah? So losing faith in that doesn't essentially, that bundle of thoughts exists as far as a relative sense of J. So self exists as a, when my head says J, the bundle of thoughts says J, it sees a body, yeah? So this body exists relatively as far as in relation to everything else. But the mental system, the bundle of thoughts we call self, doesn't see it that way. The bundle of thoughts we call self sees itself as separate and independent from everything else. That's false in Buddhist or Hindu thought, yeah? Certain aspects. Let's just stick with the not two, because that's what I talk about anyways. So, self exists relatively, but it doesn't exist in the way that it says it exists. This is very important, because sometimes when we do talks on not two and non-duality, we use the thing of the sky and the clouds. Yeah? So J is a cloud. Self is the clouds. Yeah? Our nature is the sky. When some people hear that, when the head hears that a lot of times, it will say, okay, well the clouds then don't exist at all. But they exist in relative terms. It's important to see, because if you just say, okay, lose faith in self and I'm not self, the head self has an idea about that, which is that then self will just die or stop or won't keep going. But the point of these talks in many ways is you are not doing self. So the bundle of thoughts and all the thoughts that are moving around and spinning, you're not doing that spinning. It's a mechanical conditioned movement, yeah? So we are in a program in order to keep self tame or turned down, let's say, yeah? You can realize you are not the bundle of thoughts. You can realize the cloudness. The bundle of thoughts cannot realize, the skyness. The bundle of thoughts cannot realize the skyness. You see that you're not the bundle of thoughts. And then there's a sense of spacious skyness, yeah? But the bundle of thoughts is going to keep going. Because if you understand anything, when you sit back into the skyness, self keeps going the same way it always keeps going, yeah? So we stay in a program. The program is for self. You understand? And the program is to constantly keep self in order so you can continue to lose faith in it. That loss of faith will make this life a lot calmer and we won't use, but self will continue on. So it's like a person who knows that they're not self, that body still goes to meetings because the body and the mind go on. The clouding keeps clouding even if you know you're not a cloud. The thing is, the cloud, from a cloud point of view, it thinks it's a separate, individual, unchanging thing, which is not true. That would be the playing of God, like they talk about in the book. Yeah. So, to me, the program here is observing self to see how it has defeated us. Because your nature is of the sky. So you can see self. That's why we talk about it all the time. We look at self to see how it's defeated us. So we lose faith in that self. Yeah. So all the J-ing that's going on, and there is no individual thing called J. It's just a process of constant mental movement. So we'll call it J-ing. Yeah. I can lose faith in that. From what you are, from before it, you can lose faith in that mental turning. The mental turning will turn down, but it will continue to turn. Because you're not doing that self in the first place. Yeah? So, it's important to see this because there's an idea from the mental system that says, well, if I'm not self, I'll just lose faith in it and then self will just be fine. But the thing about the whole philosophy of the Eastern side, let's say, as if it's something separate, which it's not, but whatever, is that you're not doing the self in the first place. It's going off, yeah? That's how it defeats us, because self is constantly thinking all of its alcoholic ideas, and we identify with it and listen to it. I just want to mention that because I feel it's important. It's almost like there's two levels here. There's J as the individual, which is self, yeah? That is alcoholic. That needs to keep going to a program. But what you and I are is before that. What we are is the awareness of self. Yes? Even the awareness which is before the thought me. That is our nature. So it's like two levels in a way. There's individuality, which is true in a relative sense of this world. Yeah? But that individuality takes itself to be a completely separate thing from this world, which is not true. And that idea creates a lot of craziness. So this self, J, needs to go to a program, 12-step program, in order to be put into right size, as they would say in the book. But what you and I are is the awareness of that self. You can realize you are the awareness of that self. Self is still going to program. This is why, like, spiritualizing and trying to spiritualize yourself out of addiction doesn't work. It's like I see this in yoga a lot. People are addicts or alcoholics. They go to a yoga studio as if they're going to yoga their way out of it. But them who's going to the yoga studio and doing the yoga is alcoholic. Yeah? So they're not going to yoga their way out of alcoholism as an alcoholic. That's why this program to me is beautiful, because you look right at what you're taking yourself to be, because that is what has defeated you. Self is what defeats us. Self-reliance is what defeats us, yeah? So how do we stop relying on self? We look at it and how it's failed in all its glory, yeah? And then you see you're not self. What you are is before. It's the awareness of that, yeah? The faith moves to a higher power. It moves from self, and all of a sudden, oh man, I get more space from that self. But that self, that J, keeps going because I'm not doing the J-ing in the first place. There's no doer of that. It's conditioned movement, yeah? And it sees the world in a weird way. So it keeps going to program, and it stays in service. Because then it stays out of trouble. with its own ideas. All right. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just share it every once in a while because it's important. Otherwise, people go right back to the spiritualizing of things. They go, okay, Jay doesn't need any work. I just lose faith in Jay. Yeah. But if Jay is too loud, you can't lose faith in it because you're identified as it. Yeah. So the volume of the J-ing needs to be turned down. The program does that. And then we can look at how Jay has defeated us and lose faith in it. But the volume of the J-ing needs to maintain down. So you keep going to meetings. It's like in non-duality, we negate the body and the mind as what we are, yeah? But the body and the mind go on. The negation or the not grasping onto the mental system, it doesn't destroy the mental system. It turns the volume down, but the mental system will still have all of its classic ideas and beliefs. Yeah? Good. If there's any question or something about that, if it makes any sense at all or none at all, before we do anything else, feel free to put it in the chat there. Maybe everybody might have left now after that. Frederick. Oh, welcome back. Nice. Cool. All right. Then let's cook on this. If you're in a 12-step program, you know this reading. I probably don't even need to read it. Especially if you're in AA. This is from How It Works, chapter 5. But if you ever been to a 12-step meeting, they pretty much all start with this preamble. I'm going to cut it down a little bit, yeah. But it starts, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Page 58 of the big book, this is like, How It Works is exactly how it's titled, How It Works. But there's a part of the How It Works which always nails and rings the bell for me a lot. So after the first paragraph it says this: our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Okay? So that's the second paragraph of How It Works. The third paragraph says this: at some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. One of the beauties to me of this book and of the 12-step program is there is no half measures avail us nothing, as they say. So it's like there's another part in the big book that says if we being rid of self completely can be done with the assistance of the higher power. To me, when I hear that, it says you can be rid of self completely, which is a very interesting option to someone like me. Because self has caused a lot of trouble, yeah? So the beauty of the language in this book to me is it's very direct and there's no half measures. So it says, some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Absolutely. Which would mean I'm not holding on to any of my old ideas. Absolutely to me would be all, yeah? It would be all encompassing. I'm not holding on or living by my own ideas anymore. What is that but a loss of faith in self? Yeah. So I'll just go back to the start of this paragraph. At some of these we balked. If you don't know what a balk is, It's like in baseball when somebody goes to do something, the pitcher has a ball and they go to pitch it and then they stop. They pause, yeah? So it's saying at some of the 12 steps, we balked. Usually at step 4. As soon as we have to look at our part to play, we balk, yeah? And so at some of these steps, we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. That's exactly true in my experience. I've tried that to find an easier, softer way. And I talk to people in meetings and stuff and yoga studios, and the self is always trying to find an easier, softer way. Jay always wants to find a way out of discomfort that's easier and softer for it. Yeah? Self doesn't want you to look at its play on things. So it wants to find an easier, softer way, which would be spiritualizing things in many ways. So like when somebody tells me they have a drinking problem and they're going to a Zen center to fix it, that's what I'm talking about. That is self trying to find an easier, softer way. They think they're going to steady the mental system so much that it's going to disappear forever, yeah? That can't happen because they're not doing the mental system in the first place. But as self, they're going to use meditation to not look at the actual root of the problem. The root of suffering being that self is the root of suffering, yeah? So we thought we could find an easier, softer way. Well, the you who's trying to find an easier, softer way, that's self. That's not what you are. Self is trying to find an easier, softer way for sure. Because if it goes to the program and becomes completely, thoroughly, and honest, all the spotlights in the arena go on self. Yeah? Jay will try to find an easier, softer way when really the problem is Jay. Yeah? But Jay doesn't want to look at Jay. The program and what you are before Jay. So, well, or before Frederick or Jenny or Chelsea or Dave. Yeah? So, in that case, there's a willingness to look at Jay, because Jay is self, and self-reliance is what fails us. Relying on Jay is exactly what failed me. So, trying to find an easier, softer way. What would that be but more reliance on Jay? Yeah? And guess where that will end up? That will fail me. Yeah. The practice of non-duality not be the same as a loss of faith in self. Well, non-duality is a message, it's not a practice. Non-duality is just a message that you are not what appears as duality. So the focus would be really who's the one practicing non-duality, yeah. But in some ways, I think I know what you're saying. Like listening meditation would be a method also to lose faith in self, yes. If it's taught and done properly, for sure. Yeah. But non-duality is like a message. It just points out as what not to. Self-inquiry, listening, and self-inquiry and listening would be more of a way to. It would be like Ramana Maharshi says, meditation is putting down what is the not self. But he uses self differently, so that's not a good example. He uses self as what you are, the big S self. But essentially he would say meditation is putting down self. What self is here in the big book. Alright. So just before I go on, I'll take this. Irony is surrendering, trusting my higher power, program actions. Yeah, there you go. Violet with 3 T's. This is the thing I noticed as well. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. Jay's easier, softer way is the way of more suffering and harder way, really. Yeah. But self doesn't see it that way. This is the point. Yeah. So when you say I'm very strong-willed, that's self's will. And when we live by self's will, it will misdirect us into misery and pain for sure. That we know. We've done the research, Violet. I'm sure you have as much as I have. Yeah. So we thought we could find an easier, softer way. Well, to me, the we that book talks about in that sentence is self. These individual senses of self think they can find an easier, softer way, which is to avoid the I being turned on them. Yeah. And then it just says, but we could not, which is great. The failure of trying to find an easier, softer way is very convincing, hopefully. It's a very convincing thing, I hope. I tried to find an easier, softer way in every tactic that Jay could take without looking at the problem. Yeah? Because the important thing there is why don't we look at the problem? Because we're identified with self. So if you're identified with self, when it's trying to find an easier, softer way, when the mental system is trying to find an easier, softer way, you're identified with it, you are now being driven by the mental system trying to find an easier, softer way. So it's not that you're dumb or doing something wrong. Everybody is identified with self until they hear something else. But self is trying to find an easier, softer way. And if I'm identified as it, I don't see that self itself is the problem, because I'm seeing from it, being identified with it. Yeah. Okay. But we could not. So trying to find the easier, softer way failed. Hopefully enough that failure becomes convincing. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. So this is a little bit of an encouragement statement. To be fearless and thorough from the very start. To me, the head is full of fear, yeah? So obviously, to be fearless and thorough from the very start, I would have to approach this from not the point of view of the mental system. Because the mental system is scared of everything. 100 forms of fear, what do they say? Manifests 100 forms of self or 100 forms of fear. So to be fearless and thorough, I'm going to need help from something. Let's call it a higher power. Then when fear comes up, I can pick up the phone. I can call somebody else, or I can call a higher power. And that will neutralize the fear of self, let's say. Okay. Now, the last sentence here to me is the one that always hits the bell. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. What is the oldest idea? To me, the oldest idea is that you are what you are, or where you start is the body and the mind. To me, that is the first idea of this operation. The first idea is the thought me. Now, we take ourselves to be that me and we identify with it until we might hear a different message, like through here or through the message of non-duality or not to, or Hindu philosophy or Buddhism or something. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just taken that this body and brain are what I am. So to me, that is the oldest idea. That self is what I am, and that's where I start. I am separate from everything else. Therefore, whatever self sells me through the mental system is going to be purchased, essentially. And then in that case, if I am identified with it, I'm going to do whatever self says. Doesn't matter how crazy it is, or how uncomfortable it makes me, or how off and delusional it is. compared to its view of the world. Yeah. So some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. This is why I love the 12 steps, because it cuts the head off the dragon. Because the next part is the result was nil. So as long as I'm identified as these mental ideas, the result will be nil as far as peace goes. Yeah? And if there's not peace, then the option of drinking is always on the table. If there's discomfort, the option of drinking is always there. Yeah? Because that is how this body and brain will try to take care of that discomfort. Through drinking. So really, to me, the focus stays on discomfort. Because my move is depression. Depression, anxiety, fear, yeah? So, if there's not an immense amount of discomfort from depression, anxiety, and fear, then there's no need to drink, because there's not a ton of discomfort. So, I would need to look at the discomfort first, yeah? Now, some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil. Well, I tried the easier, softer way, which was every technique to try to not be uncomfortable identified as J, and they all failed. So obviously, the oldest idea is that the J-ing is alcoholic, and they call that self, and if I identify with that, then I am operating on the old ideas. So in many ways, I'm trusting the mental system more than the higher power. And you can't serve two masters at once. Paul Hederman always uses that. So yeah. You got to make a choice, I feel. That's what they always told me early on. Are you in or you out? Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas. Result was nil until we let go absolutely. Which to me means you can open your hand on self. So when the mental system's going, you do not have to grasp on to that mental system. And in so doing, the self will keep going, meaning the mental system will keep turning. But if I don't grab onto it and identify as it, it loses its power. I'm going to trust that if I don't grasp onto the ideas of self, the higher power will catch me, let's say. That's like my exact sense. So, the infinite will be there as long as I don't keep grabbing onto the finite. If I keep grabbing onto the finite, I'm operating as these old ideas, and the result will continue to be nil. Why will the result continue to be nil? Because self is a conditioned thing. You're not doing the mental movement that's running through the noggin. It's conditioned from the past. And you can see that because it's always the same. It sees the same way constantly. Yeah? So obviously the repetition would say that it is not reacting to the ever-changing events that are happening. It's presenting the same story over and over again, which would put a little bell off that maybe it's conditioned from the past and I'm not doing that movement. So it will continue to, the results will continue to be nil because it doesn't see differently. Yeah? It's like the beliefs of J, the core beliefs of J don't change. J sees the certain way. If I'm identified as J, I'm seeing that way. And that way presents a world full of fear, self-pity, self-seeking, blah, blah, blah. Everything that's in the book. Yeah? So the results will continue to be nil if I operate on the oldest idea, which is that you start at self. And then it says, let go absolutely would be to open the hand on even the oldest idea, that I am self. Yeah. And then we can really look at how self defeated us. which is a sentence in itself which highlights something. How self has defeated us would mean there's an us and there's a self, yeah, which would put us into this. It's like the first duality, and we don't need to demonize self. You're not doing it in the first place, yeah. It's our obedience to it that has it going off. Yeah. All right. So operating on the oldest idea, being that I am self, this body and the brain, the results will be nil because self keeps doing the same thing over and over again. And you can see that if you say, I keep doing this to myself, that would be a cue to you that maybe something is doing to you and you're obeying it. Or you're identifying as it, yeah? So the mental system is reacting the same way it always reacts because that's all it can do. If I identify with that mental system, then there's a sense that I keep doing this to myself. But self is doing, yes? Self is operating the same way it always operates. We listen to it. So it's the identification with self. That is what defeats us. And it says you can let go absolutely. And then it says in another part of the big book, you can be rid of self completely with the help of the higher power. Completely. Self, you cannot destroy the mental system and the body. You can through ending this operation, but even then, who knows if that actually is true? The only ones who would know would be here to answer that question. So, if you can be rid of it completely with the help of the higher power, obviously that means you can let go absolutely. And like Huang Po says, you keep both hands open. So you don't grasp at this sense of individuality. And then it might morph, yeah? But at least it will lose its grip over the life. Self is no longer driving. That's the important part. Then there's the option that something else can drive. Please. Then there's the option that something else can drive the life aside from self. And then self's not so bad, you know. When what can't manage, like, I'm pretty convinced I'm not managerial quality. That's pretty obvious, yeah? So when it's taken out of the management position and put into, let's say, an employee position, it operates a lot better. It's like, yeah. It's a beautiful thing when it's an employee, but as soon as it tries to become a manager, I'm not managerial quality. Jay is not a managerial quality. So it needs to be put in the right position, and then it operates well. It operates well in that case. Yeah. Good. I like not being a manager is good. There's too much. You gotta try to do too much if you're managing. All right, let's open it up for questions, or if you want to share something. Of course, you can put it into the little chat box there.